here with us. This is our first in-person event since the beginning of COVID. We've been doing virtual events monthly and bi-monthly, twice monthly, I should say. Oh, someone's phone ringing already. It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Amsterdam. For those of you that don't know me, which I think most do, my name is Sarah Gilroy, and I'm the director of the sales and marketing team. Been here almost 10 years. As we noted in the invitation in our phone calls to invite you to join us today, Jim Davis is with us, and he's our president and CEO of the Amsterdam Continuing Care Health System. And he's held this position for over 31 years. He's also a board director of Leading Age New York and the Continuing Care Leadership Coalition in Manhattan. And he was appointed to the board of New York State Continuing Care Retirement Community Council, and he'll speak a little bit about that in his discussion. Our sponsor is the Amsterdam House, the Amsterdam Nursing Home in Manhattan, where Jim has been for 30 plus years. It's a 148-year-old organization. It's located on Amsterdam Avenue at 112th Street, and it's got Columbia University as one of its neighbors for a landmark for you. So Jim has certainly been our steadfast leader during this pandemic, our trusted advisor, and we hope you feel and hear and see that from him today. Led us safely through the pandemic and wants to speak to you about the benefits of this type of community, a life plan community, and why a life plan community is more important now than ever, and why you should consider it for your future, to have a plan in place. And we really have been successful here, and we'll share all of that with you. So the format today is a little unlike our other previous in-person events where we would be more hospitable, offering you coffee and a little nosh to start, and then we'd be going in for a wonderful luncheon in formal dining and chatting with you and mixing you with some residents, obviously just not appropriate at this juncture. So we'll have Jim do his presentation. We'll have plenty of time for question and answers. That's always my favorite part of the events. If you need the ladies or men's room, we're out here in the hallways, just down here, just a little bit on the right. We'll be going out after the event is over. We'll be going out the same exact way we came in, and we'll have lunches for you to take home that Chef has prepared. It's not what we would like to do. We'd love to have a hot meal with you, especially on a beautiful fall day like today. But in these times, that's what we thought, again, was best to do. I've been asked for some paperwork if we were giving out literature today. Again, we didn't want any, cross-contamination, touching things, and we're all good. We're tested weekly, Jim as well. And we're COVID-free. We've been COVID-free. He will discuss that with you. But we will meet with you individually and have private appointments. We can mail you things. We prefer for you to come in individually and meet with us and go over everything interactively. But anyway, what else? That's really the format. So we'll listen to Jim, we'll do question and answers, we'll do lunch to go, and we'll be taking appointments from you to meet with you again soon. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Jim Davis, our CEO and president. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, and thanks for being here. In these times, anything that sounds like something nice that you haven't heard in a while is refreshing. I just heard the word nosh. When was the last time you heard nosh, right? It's just, you got me very hungry. And I want to go back and get a nosh, whatever definition of nosh you want to use. But she's right, normally you'd have a buffet in the back, and we'd have coffee and cakes, and then we'd go into the dining room and have a nice lunch. But times are different, and we will never do anything here that compromises anybody. And I'm glad that you all felt you could come today and be comfortable doing that. I've been sitting in my office in New York, which is a full nursing home, since April, 7 days a week. I'm there every day. I just came here on the subway in the LIRR. I visited my son in Baltimore a while ago, and after he left, he told us he was tested positive for COVID and had symptoms. And here I am every week being tested negative. So the key to this whole thing, for all of us in society in general, is just do the right thing. Wear your mask, keep your social distancing. If you can't wash your hands, just don't touch your face, it's your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. And if you do all those things, if you sit in a nursing home 7 days a week, and if you go to your son and says, Dad, I got you again, I got COVID, you'll be fine. So thank you for coming today, and we'll make sure that nothing you do here today is compromised in any way. So we believe the Amsterdam and Harborside pre-COVID and post-COVID, perhaps even more so, is a very special place. We are a not-for-profit organization, as you know, and we decided back in 2004 to look at this piece of land, which was just a pile of dirt and sand back then, and develop what is now one of only 12 life plan communities in all of New York State. They're very hard to do, they're very hard to develop. As Sarah mentioned, I sit on the state CCRC Council, that's the overseeing body of the other 11 CCRCs in New York. And one of the things I try to do all the time is to kind of ease some of the regulations to make it a little bit easier to develop these communities. But to some extent, those regulations are important because it protects you as the consumer if you become a resident here at the Amsterdam. So, so you already know who I am. That's the original, well, it's actually the second iteration of what Amsterdam Nursing Home is now. That was actually called a home for old men and aged couples. It was built in 1896, right opposite the Cathedral St. John the Divine, just south of Columbia, although we preceded the cathedral by 2 years. So we've been around a long time as an organization. It was originally started in 1872 down in, on the Wall Street area in Trinity Place. We're going to talk a little bit today about how we did with COVID-19, our response. If there's any questions you have about COVID-19 in general, I'm not a doctor, but from a public health standpoint, I may be able to answer some of your questions. We'll talk a little bit about facts of aging, some of the trends that we're seeing and why we believe the Amsterdam and Harborside even becomes more valuable when you look at those trends. We'll talk a little bit about a life plan retirement community, what we do, what we provide, and all of its benefits. Sarah will tell you a little bit about what's available in terms of apartments, and then, of course, at the end of the presentation, we'll take questions and answers. So this button, I'll get this. So this is Amsterdam Nursing Home in New York, just to give it a frame of reference. Columbia is just north, looking up the street, and for those of you who know the Cathedral St. John the Divine, it's right across the street. From this location, this is where my office is, and that's where I left this morning to come here. So, we are now a 10-year-old community. We celebrated our 10th anniversary in August 2020. We opened in August 2010. And of course, as Sarah mentioned, your sponsor has a 148-year track record, being originally founded in 1872. We currently have 229 independent living apartments. And as I think all of you know, they vary in size and scope. We have a 100-bed healthcare center, which is adjacent to this building, but contiguous, which includes 56 skilled nursing beds and 46 what we would call, for ease of reference, assisted living apartments with memory support units in a discrete area as well. And we'll explain in a few minutes how all of these different levels interact. We're located here in conveniently in Port Washington. I actually love coming out here. I haven't driven here from Manhattan, I'm going to say in at least 2 years. I like getting on the subway. The LIR is a great trip out here. And then I don't have to worry about falling asleep because the conductor says last stop, but I have to get off. And when you get on, plenty of seats to get on. It's a very, very good place to commute from. Having raised my family in Chappaqua, way up in Westchester, not quite as simple. We believe we are a vibrant community. We have all kinds of activities and programs, opportunity for social engagement and interaction, and leaving a healthy, vibrant life in the future. That's really the core of what we do. So our response to COVID-19. Obviously, I've been in the field now, as Sarah mentioned, 47 years. Nothing has come close to this in terms of the impact that it's had on healthcare operations in particular, and of course in society in general. And we did very well here. We've been COVID-free since June, which was fairly early in terms of the progression of this disease and before it really began to be controlled. We have a 3-phase community guideline system. This is something that is our Bible and what we do and cannot do with COVID, how we progress and begin to reopen the community. All of those things are carefully described there. As I mentioned, we were COVID-free since June, and every member of the community is tested once a week. That's a state requirement. The government has ordered that since back in the spring. So every week, today's my day, we get swabbed. Through all of this, we've been having activities at various levels in various ways. And you can look here, if you are a resident in the community today's Thursday, you have the opportunity to participate in a fitness program on our channel. You can actually now go to the pool and have an exercise class. You could be doing yoga with Mia on Zoom, or this evening at 7 o'clock, you could participate in Too Much for Modern Audiences, an art history documentary. So all of this stuff goes on now and has been going on throughout COVID. Not so much the personal things initially. Now we've opened up and we are doing more communal events in a very controlled way, like the pool. This promenade room is used for David Shin's fitness classes. So things are beginning to pick up in terms of people getting together. But throughout COVID, our residents were socially engaged. They were connected through technology, they were connected through programming, and never, if you talk with them, never did they ever feel isolated or lonely, which we know many, many seniors in the community felt like. So through all of this, we believe, and I think the residents here will tell you, that they did as well as anybody did during this really serious period of time. So the only questions I'll take before I get to the end, anybody want to ask anything about COVID in general? Not so much what happened here, but okay, good. Let's do some facts about aging and why it's relevant to the Harborside. So if you live to be 65, your life expectancy is 84.2. If you live to 84.2, your life expectancy is 92. The older you live, the longer your life expectancy is. It almost seems contradictory, but it's true. When I turned 50, which is a bunch of years ago, my physician said, congratulations. And I said, what did I do? He said, well, you passed the heart attack years. From 40 to 50, men are at higher risk of heart attack. So as you pass these phases of life where certain diseases become more prevalent, or you're healthy enough to live to the older years, your life expectancy grows. But the negative to that is you will live longer and more things can happen to you. At least 70% of people over 65 will have a long-term care experience. That could be a nursing home, it could be assisted living, it could be home care, it could be short-term care in a nursing home, it could be long-term care. So 7 out of 10 people in this room, and I think there's 10 of you, will have a long-term care experience. And as that life expectancy continues to get pushed out, that 70% will get even higher. So there's a very good chance that as you think about your future, part of that thinking should include, how do I deal with the cost, accessibility, and quality of getting long-term care? 10,000 people turn 65 every day, and that goes on for a few more years. You can see where the blue meets the gray. That's where the baby boomer generation started, 1945. Kind of peaks in 58, but as you can see, it tiers pretty steady at the top. Significant implications, not just for those of us who are aging, but for society in general, because you have all these folks living older and less younger people being born to support Medicare and Social Security and a lot of other things that seniors depend upon. So these have some real social implications, as well as it does for individuals like us who are getting older. The cost of long-term care, to give you a sense, this is nursing home care. If you needed a nursing home in Long Island, it would be about $224,000 a year. In Manhattan, it's $250,000 a year, and those costs keep going up. I can tell you skilled nursing facility rates in the metropolitan area go up at least 5% a year. So those costs continue to grow. If you have a long-term stay, which could last 5, 7, 10 years, you can do the math on how costly this can become. The life plan community concept. So the Amsterdam and Harborside is a life plan community. It's one of 12 in New York. There's a couple upstate, there's a couple mid-state, 2 in Westchester, and 3 here on Long Island, 2 in Suffolk, and Amsterdam at the Harborside, the only life plan community in Nassau County. So we have multiple levels on the campus. I'm sure many of you know this already. Most of the building are independent living apartments. When you move in, you choose your apartment, and you get a lot of amenities, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And you come in and you live this vibrant lifestyle with friends and neighbors, going to shows on Broadway when they reopen, visiting museums, being on a committee to determine what kinds of activities and programs you want. It's really up to you guys what we do here. But you live a very vibrant, active lifestyle. And that's really the primary reason for coming here, social engagement and camaraderie and fellowship. And I will tell you here, the residents here, they always connect their relationship to some prior time. Maybe they lived as neighbors or they had a friend who knew somebody else. The level of friendship here is extraordinary. And if you ask the residents that, they will tell you that. You basically have to be healthy to come in. You have to be screened. This is an active, independent living community. And when you move in initially, we do expect in the state of New York, through its regulations, expect that you can be active and that you can function independently. We have multiple levels of care, as I mentioned before. We have the independent living, we have the skilled nursing, we have the assisted living, and we have the assisted living with memory support. We have a separate discrete area for residents who do get dementia and need to be cared for in a very special way. So we have a discrete unit for dementia within the assisted living component of the health center. The health center is called the Tuttle Center. What we mean by benevolence is this is a not-for-profit organization. I report to a 12-member board of directors who volunteer their time to oversee me and the corporation's assets. So we are not here to make money, only to the extent that we want to keep the business viable. But other than that, this is no profit incentive here for us at all. And if you were to come here and gave us your entrance fee and you fell on hard times, you would always be a resident of the Amsterdam Harborside. We would never do anything untoward. Unless you go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City and you blow it all the crap, then we may have to reconsider. Otherwise, when you're a resident here, you become part of our family and we'll care for you forever. So why does it make sense? So we just talked about increased medical costs. We just talked about increased longevity. And when you add that up, higher lifetime medical costs for long-term care. How many of you have long-term care insurance? Did you get a big increase lately?
Yes.
About 60%? Yeah. $500, yeah. My policy, which is a Genworth, is going up 60% a year for 3 years. It's 180%. So the costs are going up. The long-term care insurance policies didn't figure out all this longevity when they priced these policies 20, 25 years ago. And they're really significantly raising their premiums to a point where it's not becoming affordable anymore, either to keep those policies or certainly as you get older to purchase them in the first place. So better health care means increased medical costs, plus longevity means higher lifetime medical and long-term care costs. The sandwich generation, all right? Most of you, I'm sure you have children who work. They're probably not around anymore. And my guess would be if you probably wouldn't want them taking care of you, and they probably wouldn't want to. How many people in the room think their children are going to be there for them in their old age? Nobody ever raises their hands. Doesn't mean they're not good kids, but we've raised them to be independent, to be far-flung, to have careers, and what used to be the extended family, which was a source of taking care of older people as they age, really isn't the viable alternative for most people anymore. There's over 1,900 life plan communities in the country and only 12 here in New York. Now, New York has really come up short in developing these communities, and the reasons for that partly have to do with development. It's not easy to develop a community We were fortunate here. This was part of a 40-unit plan development that was part of the 2 golf courses and the Greek Orthodox Church and the Harbor View, which is right next to us. But you try to put a building like this in a suburban community, you can imagine what's going to go on. So it's very hard to do it from that perspective. And then all of the regulations that I spoke about before deters for-profit developers, because this is not something that's designed to make a lot of money. And even when you do, the state expects you to take that money and build it up into reserves to protect the residents who live here, both for the services that they provide and the refund obligations that we have for your entrance fees. So it's a state that is very, very difficult to develop a CCRC or a life plan community. So you enter, as I mentioned, when you're independent and you're able to live safely on your own. That's very important. That is part of the Article 46 Public Health Law regulations. We're required to make sure that you are independent and you can do all your activities of daily living when you first come to us. As I said, a minimum age of 62. We talked about all the levels of care. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. So you're going to come in and pay an entrance fee. And that's dependent on the amount of the fees, dependent on the size of the apartment. There are different contracts with different refundability levels. And then there's a monthly service fee. So what that gets you is all of the programming and the wonderful things we spoke about in the independent living. Transportation services, the activities, meals. But what differentiates a life plan community from Bristol and Atria and the independent living only communities is that as you age, you are entitled to move to those higher levels of care, assisted living memory support, or skilled nursing at the same monthly service fee. So you never have to face those catastrophic costs that we showed you before. And that is what makes the Amsterdam and Harborside a life plan community an insurance product as much as anything else. When you come to us, you're buying insurance to protect yourself against the future cost of long-term care. But even more importantly, what you're also buying is access to the care and access to the quality of the care. I will tell you, pre-COVID, a week didn't go by when I wouldn't get a call from somebody, a legislator, a neighbor, a friend. My mother broke her hip. My husband, this just happened, broke a vertebrae. Where do I go? How do I know I'm going to get the good quality? Who pays for it? All of that goes away when you come here. You'll never have to worry again if something untoward happens to you. Remember that 70% statistic. You'll never have to worry. You're going to come back to your home here at the Amsterdam and Harborside, and if God forbid you break a hip, you'll go to our Tuttle Center for rehab. And your neighbors will come visit you. The staff you know will come visit you. If you have a spouse, they'll be able to come visit you without even having to leave the building. And as soon as that rehab is over, you go back to your apartment. So it's not just the cost that you're going to be dealing with here in terms of saving money as you move up. It's the access and the access to the quality. And I will tell you, there are varying degrees of quality in nursing homes. Some are good, some are not so good. Where this is a 5-star nursing home, it's been 5 stars for the 10 years. Most of the rooms are private, they're large, they have beautiful garden views. I would venture to say you'd have a tough time finding a health center that's as beautiful and as well appointed as ours is, and most importantly with the staff who know you and who you will know. It's a big, big difference. I see people coming in on that 13-story building you saw in Amsterdam. I see people coming out of stretches of an ambulance, and they're looking up at this tall building, at this strange place. They're not sure where they are. None of that happens here. And I can't tell you how critically important that is if and when the time comes you need health care. So you can transition through those 3 levels of care whenever you need to. You're entitled to it when you come here as a resident. We talked about the entrance fee and the monthly service fees. And you'll meet new friends, have time to pursue activities, as I talked about before, and benevolence. Once you become a member of our family, you always become a member of our family. We might not always like each other like any family, but you're always a member of the family. Typical services, you get, we're on a point system for meals, so essentially you get dinner every day, but you can use those points in any way that you want. You can use it for breakfast. You can do it for lunch. You can skip a meal and have friends the next night. We're talking about normal times now, and they'll come back. So you get we're on a meal point system. We have inside and outside maintenance. If you have a leak in your faucet or you need your bolt changed, we'll do all that for you. You'll never have to do anything else again. You have housekeeping and flat linen service every week. Your sheets and towels will actually be washed in your unit with your washer and dryer. We have transportation services. We have a town car for local transportation. We have a van that takes folks to the supermarkets on a weekly basis. And of course, we have a large bus for programs where we go to see museums in Long Island, or in the good old days, Broadway shows in New York. And there were frequent trips into Manhattan on that bus pre-COVID. And again, we will get back there. We have all kinds of fitness classes and activities to be determined by the residents. There's a committee who decides what they want to do, where they want to go. So that's up to you guys, but there's always stuff going on. You can participate in those committees if you like. We talked about access to healthcare, and in your monthly fees, all your utilities are included, and there's no property taxes. So if you take a look at, for those of you who are living in homes now, and you look at your property taxes, and you look at your landscaping, and your snow blowing, and the repairs of the roof and the boiler and everything in between, you'll begin to see quickly that our monthly fees are very, very competitive with your current expenses, and look at all the other things you're going to get, particularly the healthcare if and when you need it. So I'm going to ask Sarah to come up. She's going to describe to you the entry process, talk a little bit about availability of apartments, and then I will come back and do my best to answer any questions that you may have. But before I introduce her, I'm going to come back up. The board of directors and the Amsterdam management is extremely committed to this community. This has been the heart and soul of everything we do, in addition to the nursing home in New York. And you have my assurance that if you come here, you'll say what every other resident has said and what most of their children have said. It's one of the best decisions they've ever made in their lives. Sarah?
Thank you, Jim. Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, so understanding entry. How do you come to be at the Amsterdam? How do you come to reside here? Again, like Jim said, you have to be independent to be able to take care of yourself, all your activities of daily living. So there will be a healthcare assessment with a medical form that you would complete stating any challenges you have, what medications you're on. That's how it works here at the Amsterdam. At other communities, it does vary greatly by community. Again, to Jim's point that the Amsterdam Life Plan is really an insurance product with a lifestyle built in. Some folks really go to great extremes to investigate your medical background. At this point, we try to keep it pretty easy. It may change in the future, all the more reason to do the Amsterdam sooner than later. But we get a self-reported form and we review it with you. Other communities get a HIPAA release from you and get all your medical paperwork from your various physicians. Financially, you need to qualify financially. Generally speaking, we would want to see that you have assets, complete assets, including real estate and whatnot, that you have assets of 2 times the value of the apartment that you're most interested in residing in. So you have to qualify financially. We can help you with that. We can work with your CPA, with your financial advisor, however we can to make it as easy as a process for you. And we then review. We look at your healthcare, your financial, your cognition. The nurses review when she meets you for the assessment, and then we move forward, hopefully, with welcoming you into the community in an apartment of your choice. And here mentioned the benevolence clause for not-for-profits. Once you move into the Amsterdam and you're approved, you can really be here the rest of your life. We've made that commitment to you. We've approved you financially, cognitively, medically, and you would be here. Do you want to advance this so I don't touch it? Jim's working for me now. Thanks, Jim. The advantages of a not-for-profit community: longer-term view, mission-driven values, quality, leadership, and again, benevolence. The photo there was just taken by me on the fly. That's a folk dancing group that takes place in the room we greeted you in today, and we just brought them outside with the greenery behind them, but that's a folk dancing group here. And this is a question I even ask myself sometimes. Do you think the next 5 years will look the same as the last 5 years? And again, life plan, making a plan for your future. Little update on availability. This is just one of our floor level plans, showing a particular floor, the second floor. Listed are the different types of apartments. If they're a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath with a den, all the varieties that are on that floor. And then showing you that for the most part on each floor we're almost sold out. There have been some changes over the last few months with folks moving on to a higher level of care. So we do have some availability. I have stood up here prior to COVID saying, you know, I have nothing, get on the wait list. How many times have folks heard me say that? So these are just a few examples. That's a sort of a really nice basic 2-bedroom, 2-bath, nice living area, full kitchen, all the appliances, laundry is in every apartment, nice closet space. So just a few examples we had here. Do we have the Zephyr before? Oh, here's a Mariner Select. This one has a small, about 70 square foot terrace, and that has a larger living area, 18 by almost 23. Has a larger kitchen as well. So there's...
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you can hear me, but you may have heard yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that the one particular company, WellPoint, the CEO, Thomas DeRosa, was either resigned or forced out. And that's the largest senior company, I believe, in the country. And these terrible times that we're living in with COVID has put particular strains on senior living and housing and such as well. So my question is twofold. What challenges do you see particularly facing seniors right now? And how is the Amsterdam differentiating itself from other, whether it be the other 11 in New York or in the surrounding areas? How do you see the differences?
I did see that article about DeRosa. That sounded to me like something internal going on, but we'll never know for sure what happened there. Good questions. So first of all, as a group, and I'll be 71, we're more vulnerable. This clearly has hit the aged population more than others, and particularly seniors with comorbidities who have problems, and they're particularly vulnerable. We think, to answer your question, we did a great job here of controlling the disease. We were COVID-free since June. You can go on our website and see what kind of experiences we did have up until then. It was very minimal. But this building is sanitized regularly. We have those guidelines I talked to you about to make sure that appropriate social distancing is maintained, that all of the appropriate infection control procedures and practices, the best practices, are maintained. So we, I think most of the life care plan communities in the state of New York did pretty well. I'm not going to say we can necessarily distinguish ourselves from the others, because they're all not-for-profits, they all have the same philosophy, they all live with the same rules and regulations. But overall, this was a very safe place to be. And your dinner was brought to your door. And if you needed medications, we got it for you. And if you needed a doctor, we took you there. So not only did we do all the things to protect you, but we made things available to our residents that many of you may have not been able to do, or many seniors may not have been able to do during this period. We will have in the near future a full wellness center here with a nurse practitioner who will be on site 5 days a week. So there'll be even less need for people to go out. So I think a combination of all of our practices to make sure that everybody here is safe. And we're very, very strict about what we do from the time you come to that door and to the time an Amazon package is brought to your door upstairs. We are very, very careful about what we do. And then if you superimpose on top of that all of the social engagement that we had during that period, because to me, one of the hardest parts about COVID is loneliness, isolation, and maybe depression. You know, we saw the residents of the nursing home in New York didn't have visitors until last week, and how sad that was. So I think in a sense we're a safe haven, like we were with Hurricane Sandy, when the children and grandchildren of our residents came here because they had no place to go. I really see life plan communities, good ones like Amsterdam, as being safe havens during this period of time. I really do. That's a combination of good practice, engagement, and bringing services to you that you cannot get in the community. I hope that answers your question.
On different types of configurations within the apartments, and very nicely you said that all of them are now occupied. It's a bit of a dilemma as to what size or configuration might be applicable, but given the fact that they are all occupied now.
They're not.
They're not?
No, not right now. They were at one time. We have apartments to choose from now.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, even having said that, though, because then the choice is, well, which one is right for you? Is there an actual waiting list, for example, or do people make a decision? Well, too bad that this particular configuration is not available now. What do you do next?
Well, we do have a waiting list for that very reason. Certain people want certain kinds of apartments. So if there's something that you really want that's not available, you can go on. I think it's $1,000. You can be on our waiting list.
10,000.
10,000. 10,000. You can be on our wait. So there are people on a waiting list for certain select apartments. But my guess is, since things slowed down through COVID, because we weren't allowed to, this is the first in-person event we've had since COVID started. So since things have slowed down, there may be more variety now than you think. So my guess is there's enough variety now that there's probably something there that might meet your needs. So I guess that's something you can certainly go through with Sarah and the sales counselors with to see if there's something that fits your needs. But we do have availability.
And I have met with some other folks in the room too. Anything that we would show you, as an example, we looked at 3 different apartments. They were all available. Not to say since I met with you a few weeks back that something couldn't be gone, and that happens all too frequently. But if we're presenting something to you, it's available. So we were speaking about, I'm sorry for the confusion, we were speaking about just one floor plan when we showed the visual, and it showed all the apartments, and then it showed almost all of them sold, and very few remaining. So again, we do have availability, so I'm sorry for any miscommunication here today, because I want to be clear on that, because when we do have availability, then a month from now we might not, and the opportunity might be missed. And to Jim's point, we do have a variety. We do have our smallest 1-bedrooms available. We do have some mid-sized apartments, 1,700 square feet. We do have an apartment or two with a terrace. So all these things, I have an apartment with a window in the kitchen, some things that are hard to come by sometimes. The folks that are on the wait list, we're down to maybe a dozen or 14 now. They're very much so waiting for something specifically because they probably have a friend who lives here and wants their friend's apartment. And I remember when we first started the wait list, and gentlemen, it was like a meet and greet with residents and prospective residents, and I introduced the prospective resident who just got on the wait list to this lovely Larry Bover, lovely resident. And I said, oh, Mary, this is Larry. And they're shaking hands. And he wasn't letting go of her hand until she told him what apartment she was waiting for, because he didn't want to be friends with her if she was waiting for his apartment. So anyway, We don't tease you with things that we don't have. We'll educate you. We really try to listen and discover what you're looking for, what your budget is, what your space requirements are. Do you like a certain view? Do you have to have a terrace? Do you not care about the kitchen? You're going to store shoes in the oven. You know, there's something for everyone in the selection that we have. There really is, and they're all different. And that's my magic number as an example. The maximum number I would show any given person at one visit, absolute maximum, is 3 apartments. Because you kind of have to absorb it, and if anything, I'm showing you how different our community is and how 3 apartments can be so different to each other. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Quickly, what is the current percentage of refund when you leave under whatever circumstances?
There are different contract options.
Yeah.
And you can go through that with the sales council. Different contract options affect the pricing of the entrance fee or the monthly service fee. But you can go through that with the sales councils.
Okay.
But there are options. Point Village. It's in Fort Myers, and you familiar with it?
Well, my friend is in Fort Myers.
Okay. Well, they'll know Shell Point Village. They have, it's Florida pricing, but for wealthier people from Midwest and the South, 10% of their apartments are sold and they don't live there. They're just buying the apartment to make sure that they don't lose their ability to be admitted. So if they never move in, so they only get a percentage back, like any other insurance. So there is a market that understands in a very, very passionate way that I don't want to wait too long, because if I wait too long, I won't be eligible. So they buy the apartment. May not be as realistic here because this is New York. That's Fort Myers, lovely place, but the prices are less. So to answer your question, when, you gotta have to kind of think, as we get older, things change pretty rapidly. It's a personal decision, I really can't answer that for you. But when you look at the things we just talked about, what could happen to you, 70% out of 10 people in this room will have a long-term care experience. When you think what that costs, to me, it's a decision that should be made sooner than later. I really believe that. But it's really a personal decision. The average age here, Sarah, now is about 80, 82 in the community. That's the community's average age. I'm not sure what the average age of new entrants are, but the average age of the community is in the low 80s. That's pretty typical nationally. But we've had residents who've been with us from the beginning, who came in their early 60s and 70s, and they're part of that number. But I hear a lot of people come in, I'm not ready yet, and they're 85 and they're in a wheelchair. I say, well, may want to rethink that a little bit. It's really a personal decision. But if you think about what this community offers, don't get focused on the healthcare component. It's really a great place to live, where you're going to have friends and colleagues. You're going to be socially engaged pre-COVID, post-COVID, with trips and activities and arts and crafts, whatever you want to do. So if you look at it from the standpoint of what the community is mostly about, with this little extra protection hanging out there, there's no reason to wait. There really isn't, in my opinion. You must be the donuts. He gave me the thumbs up, so I guess the answer was okay. Any other questions? Because we're not going to have lunch together like we normally would, where I always ask people to come up and ask me anything they want. If it's too personal, I'll let you know, but that hasn't happened yet, so I'm not worried about that either. There must be another question. Make me feel good. Let me answer one more question. Sarah has a question. Uh-oh, this could be tough.
I'm not going to ask a question, just going to make a statement as I'm sitting here. Just as another thing under normal times, yesterday I had my flu shot. Thankfully, I had it in my left muscle of my upper arm, because my arm's hurting a little bit today. And I was tested for tuberculosis, a PPD test. So those are other things that has nothing to do with COVID, has nothing to do with this pandemic. But as an employee here, that's a commitment that you must make to be tested annually for these things. And I go through a health assessment. It's also good for myself because it forces me to think about my health as well. So I was just sitting here and I figured nobody's asking a question, I would share that we had to, it's our health screening time of the year. It's almost around this time of the year.
Actually, in general, I think healthcare facilities now, and people are still reluctant to go back to hospitals. I wouldn't hesitate for a minute. If you have a doctor's appointment, I wouldn't hesitate for a minute. They're now the safest places I think you can be. They're taking extreme precautions. I went to my ophthalmologist's office a couple of weeks ago. I'm considering having a cataract removed. And you know, it's social distancing. Every 3 chairs are cordoned off. Everything's being wiped down every 5 minutes. I mean, how much safer a place can you go where there are health professionals who understand the disease? So it's kind of like that here. We will do everything we need to do to make sure everybody's protected. But again, do those other things. So if you needed to see a dentist, you had a toothache during COVID, we'll get you to your dentist. Somebody in their house may not want to, maybe didn't want to leave. So in addition to all the safety issues that Sarah just talked about, we provided a whole bunch of other stuff, again, that made this a safe haven. And then superimposed with all the engagement and the activities, because I truly believe loneliness and depression was a major unquantifiable aspect of this disease, and it's pretty sad. I was a little bit early for the LIR training, and I decided to go up and look at Amtrak. It's sad. I mean, there's nobody there, except some homeless people and some people with serious mental health issues, and I just felt this sense of loneliness, and you feel it more in Manhattan, because Manhattan has changed so dramatically. I came out here, and although we're not as busy as we normally would be, it just felt better. But I hope someday you'll get a chance to talk to our residents. Two of your neighbors actually sit as members of our board of directors, Rhoda Feiner and Sylvia Dunsky, and they will tell you, and I think it's on the website, I think you can see their testimonials, how strongly they felt, not only how well protected they were, but the level of service they got, meals to their apartments, trips to doctors or any other place they needed to go, the social engagement, how grateful they were to be here during this unprecedented pandemic. Yes, sir?
Can I just ask very quickly, just to build on that, and again, you're a professional in this industry, what was your policy about people coming and going from their rooms? You said you would take them to the doctor. Could they leave on their own and then block the visitors from coming in? But how much freedom of movement was there in the facility or coming and going from the facility?
Well, you know, it varies from, you know, some people say, how could you be in a nursing home 7 days a week and won't leave? And then you get people who get on a crowded subway. So it varies, you know, from individual to individual. But if somebody needed to or wanted to leave the building, you know, everybody was very well educated on what they had to do. You had to be screened. You have to be screened to come back into the building. So we took very careful precautions for anybody. If you get into our town car, you'll see there's a plastic divider between the back seat and the driver. So we did all these things to make sure that whoever did want to come out when they could get some fresh air, had proper precautions, and that's part of that guideline system that I referred to before. And part of the reasons we got such good results with not having people with COVID-19.